Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update.
Money FM 89.3, you're with me, Lynn Lee. Now, just as we human beings interact with one another, so do machines. In fact, there is an increasing volume of digital interactions occurring between machines, AI agents, automated systems, APIs, bots, and along with that, the rapidly growing number of machine identities. Reports say machine identities now far outnumber human ones. Recent findings by CyberArk, a leader in digital security, paint a concerning picture. Many companies struggle to protect machine identities. More than a third already struggle to gain visibility into them. In Asia Pacific, 78% of security leaders reported security incidents or breaches due to compromised machine identities. As machine-to-machine communication reshapes the digital landscape, this brings a fresh set of security challenges for businesses to address. So what can enterprises do to secure these digital credentials, which have become a top cybersecurity priority? To find out more about machine identities and the associated risks, let's speak with Ssu Han Koh, who is the Solutions Engineering Director in the ASEAN region with CyberArk, which is a global leader in identity security. Welcome, Ssu Han.
Thank you, Lindy.
Great to have you on the show. I understand that CyberArk recently released its 2025 State of the Machine Identity Security Report. And in this report, the data reveal that machine identity-related security incidents are on the rise as the volume and complexity of machine identities continue to multiply. Before we get to that, for the benefit of all our listeners, could you perhaps explain in a simple way just what is machine identity?
Sure thing, Lindy. So machine identity is like human identity. So let me start off with the human identity and relate it back to the machines. Mm-hmm. So for humans, we need to authenticate to systems like if you go online banking, if you use government services, you probably need to identify yourself using your name, your passports, or even your NRIC. Mm-hmm. For machines, it's similar, right? If they want to communicate to one another, they need to identify who they are. And so for machines, they require usually what we call certificates or shared secrets to identify who they are, to be able to authenticate to other systems. And in today's world, machines are communicating with one another in a lot of ways.
Okay, can you talk more about this explosive growth of machine identities?
Sure. So why this growth is there, it has been building up for the last couple of years. You see it in the area of seeing more cloud-native services. Mm-hmm. Technologies are actually evolving to be much more nimble in organizations. And because of that, a lot of organizations are building up more services in the cloud, whether it is for their staff and their employees, for their business partners, or for their customers. All these services and systems actually talk to one another, which means there's a lot more of these machine identities. The other area is also on AI, right? So everyone's looking at investing in AI. A lot of organizations have started investing and researching into AI. As these AI systems, we think about how do we use it. But from CyberArk's perspective, what we're looking at is also how do we secure this. And back end of this is a lot of machine identities that's talking to one another to make the AI smarter.
Unfortunately, this growth comes with amplified risks. 91% of Singapore's security leaders, according to your report, anticipate the number of machine identities in their organization to increase by as much as 150% over the next year. Those are really scary numbers, Ssu Han. What's going on? Why are leaders alarmingly concerned? What is the reality of machine identity security at the moment?
Yeah. So the numbers growth is not surprising. We have seen with organizations where they have started using a lot more AI, as I mentioned, more systems going to market, more services that they're trying to roll out for their customers and grow their businesses. But because of all this development in using the digital space and digitization, there's a lot more machines communications, and each of these require much more machine identities. So if you look at where the worry is, because the last couple of years we've seen more and more attacks as well. So the report does show that 75% of the security leaders reported incidents or breaches due to machine identities. And that could be resulted in a couple of areas. One, unauthorized access to sensitive data, whether it's delay of the application launches, which affects their business, or even the third point, which is outages impact to their customer experiences. So that's why organizations are definitely getting much more worried and putting more priorities into securing the machine identity.
Could you talk more about the security implications? With more machine identities, there are more risks of, security breaches. What will we see if that happens?
Yep. So, in today's landscape where the attacks are continuing to grow, machine identities is one of the key areas that organizations are actually starting to look at, more into machine identity, because with machine identities being more interconnected, there's going to be a much more bigger impact in case of any of the machine identities gets compromised. So when we look at this area, organizations are actually starting to be much more involved and prioritizing how do they secure machine identities in a more programmatic approach.
Does it mean delayed production timelines or, worse customer experiences? Perhaps talk along those lines?
Okay, sure. So once there are compromises in machine identities, in fact, the customers, their internal staff, it will all be impacted. For example, earlier I talked about the application or the services that they want to launch gets delayed, so the business gets impacted. Right?
I see.
If the service gets down because the machine was compromised, then their customer experience could be impacted as well. And that could affect their top line and their bottom line in terms of their business.
Okay. Let's talk about the challenges organizations face in managing machine identities and also securing machine identities. What are some of the challenges that you found from the report?
Sure. From the report, what it showed that organizations, 90% of the security leaders reported that there's some form of machine identity security program within those organizations, but it's still on the initial phases where they lack some of the maturity. Right? So in terms of what they're looking at in terms of potential gaps in terms of their programs, it's a lack of a strategy or immaturity of the strategy at this point of time. The second challenge that they face is how do they adopt to the shorter life cycle of machine identities. When you think of machine identities, sometimes we think about systems that have been there for a while or has been there for years. But the other consideration is systems that might be shorter lived. One example is that if we look at where organizations, as they move to cloud, some of these systems sometimes we need to scale up as the business has a new marketing campaign, a new launch, say of a new car, for example. These systems need to scale up to the need of the businesses. To do that, there'll be more machines that are spun up in order to cater for those performance. And those machines all have got identities that needs to be secured. So when you look at this couple of areas, including potentially the attackers are still not stopping and they're still continuing to look for ways to steal identities of organizations, to steal their data, disrupt their businesses. All these are areas where machine identities becomes very front and center in terms of priorities of organizations that they need to secure.
Okay, so you're talking about a lack of strategy, changing life cycles, and also the complexity of cloud native, right? So what about under management, perhaps? Is it possible that some enterprises might have poor visibility into the situation?
Yes, today when we speak to organizations, a lot of organizations' feedback is that as they embark on this journey, they want a much more programmatic approach in terms of machine identity security. A lot of times organizations have got some form of machine identity security, but it's very much bits and pieces based on the individual departments or users. What organizations are looking forward as they go into 2025 and beyond is really creating a programmatic approach to machine identity security. So as part of the approach, one of it is visibility. How do I make sure I understand and know where all the machine identities are in my organization? How do I make sure we don't have blind spots? Other areas, including the environment could be dynamic. Earlier I talked about scaling and more services to be rolled out as a business that environment changes. And areas about how organizations need to be much more flexible. One area of an emerging threat was actually like quantum computing. You may have heard of it. And that will affect identity security. And organizations need to start thinking about how do they deal with changes and emerging threats together.
Okay. Now, looking at machine identities versus traditional identity-based threats, what can you tell us? What should organizations be looking out for?
So the traditional threats of malware attacks or attackers still continue to be there. What happens is what we have seen, and CyberArk has mentioned this in the last couple of years, which is identity security is one of the key areas that attackers target towards. Because they can ship posts as a staff or as a legitimate machine in order to go into the network and exploit the systems and steal the data. So when you think of identity and security in terms of human and machines, the machine part is going to be much more higher weightage and priority going in the future. Because imagine for one human identity, we do see like there's about 45 machine identities.
Wow, okay. So certainly machine identity security cannot be an afterthought. It looks to be a serious cybersecurity concern. How can businesses build a more mature end-to-end machine identity security strategy to mitigate these risks?
Yeah. So from a strategy standpoint, we've seen organizations starting to look at machine identity security more of a programmatic approach to really help them to identify, create visibility and flexibility into their programs. So some of the best practices we have seen, right, to include make sure that they implement least privilege and regular audits. How do they secure the credentials or the passwords that needs to be rotated from time to time in a more regular fashion, much like the way we manage our passwords. And the other aspect is from the audit and review to make sure that all the transactions are logged, they are monitored as part of the cyber response.
All right. Okay, before I let you go, any final advice for enterprises starting this journey into looking at boosting the security in terms of machine identity?
Sure. So the last advice I would leave is to leave for the audience is really to think about machine identity should be a very central program in terms of where we are heading in the next 1-2 years. As the number of machine identities continue to grow and outnumber the number of human identities, this will become a very important part of organizations' core strategy to secure their machine identity.
All right. Thank you very much, Ssu Han.
Thank you very much, Lindy.
Appreciate your insights today. Ssu Han Koh there, Solutions Engineering Director in the ASEAN region at global identity security firm CyberArk.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.